The village was alive that night. Bright strings of lanterns stretched across narrow streets, glowing against the dark sky. Drummers beat their instruments with excitement, and children danced barefoot, their laughter echoing in the warm evening air. Women sang traditional songs, their voices rising above the hum of the crowd, while men prepared the feast, laying out trays of steaming rice, roasted meat, and sweet syrupy desserts. It was not just a wedding. It was an event the entire community had been waiting for. The groom, dressed in a shimmering golden sherwani, walked confidently among the guests. He smiled, shook hands, and greeted his relatives with perfect grace. To everyone, he looked like the picture of charm and pride. His tall figure and calm demeanor won admiration from the younger men, and the elder women whispered prayers for the couple's happy future. The bride, veiled in red, sat quietly in the decorated corner of the courtyard, her eyes lowered, her heart racing with nervous anticipation. There was joy in every corner. The courtyard was filled with music, the aroma of food, and the sparkling laughter of guests. Yet, beneath the layers of festivity, a strange unease lingered. Some guests noticed that when the groom passed by, the flame of the lanterns flickered strangely, as if disturbed by a hidden breeze. The animals tied nearby grew restless, neighing and shifting uneasily. But people dismissed it as mere coincidence. No one could imagine that this night of happiness was about to turn into something unforgettable and horrifying. As the night carried on, the wedding rituals began. The courtyard glowed under the light of flickering lanterns, and guests crowded closer to witness each step of the ceremony. The groom sat tall, his golden attire shimmering under the glow of the lamps. Yet, something about him felt off. At first, it was subtle. When he smiled, his lips curled too slowly, too deliberately, as though the expression didn't quite belong to him. Then, during a prayer, his voice unexpectedly dropped, deep, guttural, almost echoing like two voices overlapping. A few elders exchanged uneasy glances, but quickly looked away, unwilling to disrupt the celebration. The bride, hidden behind her red veil, noticed it most. Each time she raised her eyes toward her groom, she found his gaze already fixed on her. His eyes glistened unnaturally, catching the lantern light in a way that seemed more like glowing embers than human warmth. When their eyes met, her heart skipped, not from love, but from an unexplainable fear. Children playing nearby suddenly began crying, pointing at the groom before being hushed by their mothers. The animals tied in the corner, goats and horses, kicked against their ropes, their eyes wide with alarm. A guest, half joking, whispered, "Strange things tonight. Perhaps the spirits are jealous of this wedding." Laughter followed, but it was nervous, thin. Despite the growing unease, the ceremonies continued. People convinced themselves it was nothing. No one dared to suggest that the groom might not be what he appeared. But deep down, the air itself carried a warning. Something unnatural was standing among them. When the final rituals ended, the bride was quietly led to the decorated bridal chamber. The room was filled with the fragrance of fresh roses and jasmine garlands hanging from the ceiling. A golden lamp flickered gently in one corner, casting a warm glow across the bed draped in red silk. It was meant to be a room of love, warmth, and new beginnings. Moments later, the groom entered, closing the heavy wooden door behind him. At first, everything seemed normal. He smiled softly at the bride, and she lowered her eyes shyly. Yet as silence settled in, the atmosphere began to shift. The room grew colder, unnaturally so, as though winter had suddenly crept inside. The bride pulled her shawl tighter around herself, confused by the sudden chill. The lamp flames sputtered, bending sideways as though disturbed by a strong wind, yet not a single window was open. The garlands swayed on their own, though no one touched them. Then came the whispers, faint, chilling voices that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. They spoke in a language the bride could not understand, sharp syllables echoing in her ears. Her heartbeat quickened. She glanced at the groom, hoping for comfort, but instead of concern, she found him staring blankly at the wall, his eyes unblinking, his body unnaturally still. The bride's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to speak, but her voice failed her. Something was deeply wrong. This was no ordinary silence of a wedding night. This was the silence before terror revealed itself. The silence in the room thickened until it felt suffocating. The bride sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap, as the whispers grew louder, circling around her like unseen shadows. Slowly, she turned her gaze toward the groom. What she saw made her blood run cold. His eyes, once dark and gentle, were now glowing a fierce crimson, burning like hot coals in the dim light. The groom's smile twisted unnaturally, stretching wider than a human face should allow. His breath came out in short, heavy bursts, each exhale carrying a foul stench that filled the chamber. The bride gasped, stumbling backward as his features began to warp. His teeth elongated, sharp and jagged, pushing past his lips. His hands, once adorned with golden rings, curled into claws, nails stretching black and pointed. His skin darkened and rippled, as if something monstrous beneath was forcing its way out. What are you?" the bride whispered, her voice breaking. The groom tilted his head slowly, unnaturally, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. When he spoke, his voice was layered, half human, half something ancient and sinister. "I was never what you thought I was," he hissed. The garlands on the walls withered instantly, petals blackening and falling to the floor. The lamp shattered with a sudden hiss, leaving only the eerie red glow of his eyes to illuminate the chamber. The truth was undeniable now. The groom was no man at all. He was a Jinn, hiding behind the mask of a husband. The bride stumbled backward, her body pressed against the cold wall of the chamber. Her heart raced so violently that it drowned out the whispers still echoing around her. The groom, no, the Jinn, moved closer, each step slow and deliberate, his crimson eyes burning through the darkness. She screamed, her voice piercing and desperate, but the heavy wooden door slammed shut with a force that shook the room. She ran to it, pounding with her fists, crying out for help. Yet, no sound seemed to escape. It was as though the chamber had been swallowed by another world, sealed from the outside. The shadows on the walls began to shift, stretching and twisting into monstrous shapes. They writhed like serpents, surrounding her, reaching toward her with clawed fingers of darkness. The garlands of jasmine and roses turned black, crumbling into ash, the fragrance of flowers replaced by the stench of smoke and rot. The bride clutched her veil to her chest, tears streaming down her face as she whispered hurried prayers, her voice shaking. Her pleas seemed to anger the creature. The Jinn's growl rumbled like thunder, his form looming larger, casting an inhuman shadow across the trembling bride. For a moment, everything went still. Then, with a roar, he lunged forward, his clawed hand striking the bedpost and splintering the wood into shards. The bride's scream ripped through the chamber again, but outside, no one heard it. The world beyond remained in silence, blind to the horror unfolding inside. Outside the chamber, the wedding guests had begun to notice strange disturbances. The music had faltered, laughter had grown uneasy, and one by one, people fell into whispers. Some claimed they had heard a faint scream, but when they leaned closer to the chamber door, there was only silence, thick, unnatural silence. A group of men gathered near the entrance, exchanging anxious glances. "Perhaps the bride is frightened. It is her first night," one of them suggested nervously. But the elders in the crowd did not look convinced. They had seen the way the lamps flickered whenever the groom walked past, the way animals had cried out in fear. The village's oldest man, leaning on his staff, finally spoke in a trembling voice. "This is no ordinary groom. His shadow does not move as his body does. Did you not see it? It lingered behind him like another being." The younger men scoffed, but unease crept across their faces. From inside the chamber, a sudden crash echoed, with splintering, as if something massive had struck against the furniture. The bride's muffled cry followed, just for a heartbeat, before silence swallowed it again. Several villagers stepped back, fear overtaking curiosity. The elder whispered a chilling truth. "He is not a man. He is a Jinn in disguise. And if we open that door, we may invite his wrath upon us all." No one dared touch the handle. The wedding that had begun with joy was now shrouded in dread. All they could do was wait and pray. The long night finally dragged into dawn. Pale sunlight crept into the courtyard, its warmth unable to erase the unease that had settled over the villagers. No music played, no voices sang. The wedding that had begun with celebration had ended in silence and fear. At last, the chamber door creaked open on its own. The villagers, gathered at a cautious distance, stared wide-eyed. Inside, the once decorated bridal room lay in ruins. The garlands of flowers were nothing but black dust scattered across the floor. The bed was shattered, its posts broken as though struck by immense force. The groom was gone. Not a trace of him remained. No footprints, no blood, no torn cloth. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. But the bride was there, lying unconscious on the cold ground. Her hands bore strange, charred marks as though burned by fire, and her face was frozen in an expression of unbearable terror. When she finally awoke, she could not speak. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted around in fear, but no words left her mouth. She would never again talk about what she had seen that night. The villagers whispered among themselves. Some claimed the Jinn had taken the groom's place to deceive them. Others believed the bride had been marked, chosen by the creature for reasons no human could understand. But one thing was certain: on quiet nights, when the wind howled through the village, people swore they could hear a man's laughter, low and mocking, echoing through the darkness. The wedding was over. The horror had just begun.